Hey, Mike, how are you? Welcome to Pop Culture SquadCast Live on Tuesday night.
Well, thank you. I am fine. How are you doing, Bob?
I'm doing good. I'm glad to have you back. We have a great guest tonight, and we're excited to do it. We got lots to talk about. It is it is it's a fun time in comics nerddom and fandom. Lots going on, lots of new stuff starting to come out. It feels like comics took over the TV premiere thing, and we have fall premieres of things going on. Um, also, some big conventions coming up and other things. So, how what's going on with you?
Well, not much. It gets dark here up in New England,
It's such beautiful
and
weather, though, right
the
now.
weather has been beautiful. That's definitely true. But when it gets dark early, and this is early by my standards, because I'm a vampire.
Yes.
I mean, I get to sleep like at sunup. It's very disconcerting because I never get a chance to to see the sun. It's a lonely, lonely lifestyle.
Well,
Good
um,
evening.
I want to we got a few things I want to talk about before we bring on our guest. Matt Bors is going to be our guest tonight, and he's already here. But there's a few things I want to talk about. We have some things coming up. You weren't here last week because you were a bit under the weather, and I had some prep stuff, and I said to you afterwards that I was hoping to talk about some things, and I had prepared for it, and you said, "Don't worry, it'll still be there," and you're right. So
Yeah.
so I want your take as a native Chicagoan of and let's all genuflect to the flag of the city of Chicago. Uh, what is what's
I
your take
wear
on what's
the
going on? What's your take on what's going on in the city that made you famous?
that made me famous.
Well,
Okay, it's as long as it's not beer. I wear the Chicago flag pin whenever I go out to like conventions and stuff. If you go to Baltimore next month, you'll see me wearing that little pin. I'm a proud Chicagoan, as are most Chicagoans who leave town. And there's a statement, a saying that went around. I think it started at Second City that Chicago is a great city to be from. And that's true because so many great people earned made their bones in Chicago. It's a very creative city. And the love I have for it, and this is true for all of us expats, most of us, is breathtaking. I mean, it has a grip on us. So we hate to see the city being fucked with, but Trump has been doing this now since before he went down that golden escalator. And I'm getting a little tired of it, but not as tired as the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois, who are standing up to Trump. So, after all of these years, I can say I have never been more proud to be a Chicagoan. He doesn't like the city because we took down the honorary Donald J. Trump signs in front of Trump Tower. Somebody stole them, actually, somebody who did not care for Mr. Trump, and hard to imagine. And they were never replaced for good reason because he acted like an idiot. Again, hard to imagine. So now that he's under criticism for, all the troops in uh, Washington D.C. who are picking up garbage because they have nothing else to do, and all of the troops who are in Los Angeles, he's added Chicago to that because it's another town that stands up to him, that is a Democratic Party run town in terms of its voters. And um, because we stand up to him. So he hates Chicago. He's got nothing but shit from us every time he does something shitty.
Well, that's interesting. I don't know how that works. I mean, you do shitty things, you get shit.
Well, yeah, but you see, not when you think you are both God and king and emperor.
Yeah. Well, it's exhausting.
It is exhausting. I mean, I feel sorry for all the cities that he threatens, and I'm hoping that
mine is also one of them. So we'll
yeah, Baltimore most certainly is. Matter of fact, it's pretty high on the list.
It is. We're next, I think.
You might be, and unless you get rid of your Democratic mayor.
Well, that's not happening. He comes to Baltimore Comic Con and cosplays.
Does he really?
Yeah, he was there he comes every year. One year he was there. He was dressed as Vision, and his wife was Scarlet Witch.
Introduce me.
Oh, I will.
Introduce me. I'm fascinated by that. We actually have comics fans in office throughout the country, and they're not. I think that's probably always been true, but now they're vocal about it. So I think that's amusing.
Yeah, I was saying the mayor, right? The mayor is the one who comes, not
yeah.
Brandon Scott has been to Baltimore Comic Con a few times. He usually comes with his family and cosplays, and we look forward to that.
Well, that's Baltimore Comic Con is not only the place where I first met John Lewis on wonderful moments in my life,
right? Sure,
but actually had a table next to him or near him and not a lot of people at that moment in time knew who John Lewis was at the convention, at the Comic Con. Right. And I was one of the dozens who were just out of my mind meeting this great man. Right. Subsequently, I met him again, was able to introduce my daughter to him at Columbia University, where he did a lecture and was interviewed by Paul Levitz, comics and politics and political concerns, and fascinating man. Lived up to his reputation in every respect. And so Baltimore, I'm not surprised to see that we have a couple of folks who do things.
Yep,
in Baltimore. That's great.
So,
how's it going to end?
What?
Not well. I was just wondering if you were going to ask me how this thing is going to end with Trump.
Oh, it's not going to. Listen, I don't. We have too many good things to talk about right now. Well,
all right.
Before we get to that, I do want to. I want to get to a little bit of a passing. So we started this little site what is it? It's 2015. So coming on 7 years, 2018.
2015 would be 10 years.
It was 2025, and it's 2025 now. So it's like 2018. We're at 7 or 8 years now that we've been doing this. I gotta look back, and I'm not gonna do that for this second. But when we did this, we came up with this name, Pop Culture Squad, and for marketing reasons, we came up with the idea that we would have some mascots, some goofy little mascots to do that. And if you see some of our merch, I don't know if I have it with me, but we had a P, a C, and an S. So the P was a corgi named Potato. So there's a mascot for that. And there's a C was a skull named Casey, and you can see that in some of our little merchy stickers and whatnot. And then the S was for Strummer, and Strummer was our fearless leader's black cat. And we had it's a loss in the family because Strummer passed. This was Strummer, and Strummer passed and took the Rainbow Bridge to the other side this past week. And we just want to take a minute to remember him because he was there at the beginning with us, and we'll miss him. He was an important part of Pop Culture Squad and Adrian's life, and he was a good boy.
I haven't I hadn't seen him for a few years, and I knew he was sick, but his passing struck me very hard, nowhere near as hard as it struck Adrian, of course. And he was the first of 3 black cats in our life in a row. Well, no, maybe it was the second. I can't count anymore. But we have the last 3 cats have all been black cats, generally with some white in interesting, provocative places. Not so in Strummer, who, by the way, was, yes, indeed, named after the man behind the Clash.
Yes, of course. Of course. So that was some sad news that happened, but we have some other things that we want to talk about. One of the other things I want to talk about, and I need your help on this. So we have kind of a recurring theme on this show. We get to it occasionally, more often than we want to be honest with you. But it's our segment called Diamond Issues, and
it is.
There's more Diamond issues. For those who are new, Diamond Comic Distributors ran into bankruptcy, was bought. There's been this issue going on where publishers have stock that has been in consignment that the people want to sell. I don't know who wants to sell it. Somebody wants to sell it, but the end result is that the publishers get nothing. That's the intent of what is going on. There's been more announcements even today where that Diamond Comics, the debtor, and I believe this is like the existing entity that was Diamond Comics Distributors, are the debtors in this whole situation, and they want to sell this vast amount of comic inventory and take the money to pay their debts. The new owners, which is Sparkle Pop / Ad Populum, who bought Diamond Comic Distributors at auction, are not involved in that part. But there's a bunch of, I don't know, there's a bunch of publishers who are saying, no, you can't sell that. That's our stuff. You're just holding it. And what I found fascinating looking at this article or this information is that Diamond Debtors accuses the publishers of failing to properly secure their interest in the consignment goods by filing a UCC-1 financing statement with the Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation, and that this oversight leaves the inventory vulnerable to claims by its creditors, effectively making it part of the bankruptcy estate.
That's what they say. First of all, they're the second people to have won that bidding war. It wasn't a war.
Well, it's not. That's not those people. Even they're not the people who are doing the suing. It's the Diamond
debtors. So it's the first people.
The first people.
Right. Numbers. I was promised no math. The amount of inventory that was there, it's got to be. I mean, in retail dollars, you can always get a number. How much it's really worth? It's probably a little less than that, but it's something north of $1 million. Oh
no, they already sold $1 million worth of stuff between them.
Right.
And there's more. There's more
there. Yeah. And big publishers and small publishers, but all that we call independent, because they're not Marvel or DC. All of those guys are now saying, look, it's not your property. It's not your property. You're just holding it there for us, which was part of the service that Diamond had delivered, because they can't afford to have their own warehouses or service from those warehouses, because they're small, independent publishers, including some fairly large independent publishers, Fantagraphics and Dynamite, outfits that have been known for quite some time. And Fantagraphics has been around for 50 years, longer.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
It's really insane. It's not their property, and we hired lawyers to come up with stuff like this. Like, oh no, here's this obscure law that may or may not be effect or may or may not be appropriate, but that's the reason why we ripped off six figures from all of you people. So screw you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that they went into debt to buy a company that may or may not work out for them. We all make stupid moves and we all have buyer's remorse. But we try not to be thieves about it. Now, I'm not saying that these people are thieves because that's up to the courts to decide. But it sure looks like it to me. And I have no faith in the courts either. What will become of all this? It is possible that some of those guys can go out of business. Some of the publishers can go out of business. Very possible.
We're joking a little bit here, trying to make some light of it in terms of the head spinning things, but this is a very serious issue, and we're going to continue to bring it up and let people know and give you places. Graphic Policy is a great site to go to find out information, as well as Bleeding Cool, as well as Comic Beat. All three of those sites are doing a great job covering this story, keeping people up to date. So we encourage you to go check it out if you want to find out more.
And we wax poetic about it from time to time at the Pop Culture Squad website as well, but mostly we babble about it here.
Yeah.
There's a technical word for what's going on here with this post-diamond thing. The technical word is shitstorm.
It's a good one. It's a good term.
It's absolutely perfect.
So we got two more quick things to get to, and then we're going to get to our guest because he's waiting, and it's fantastic stuff we're going to get to. Quick things. One is, we are all about supporting independent comic book creators, and there's a Kickstarter that's going on that I want to make sure we get into and just talk about briefly. It is called Coralthea: Waking Nightmares and Forgotten Fates. 4 artists, 4 heroes, 4 nightmares brought to life in this comic anthology based on Coralthea: Walking Fates D&D live play. So there is a podcast that live watches a D&D campaign or several D&D campaigns called Coralthea: Walking Fates. And so people go on to this podcast and they play their campaigns and their D&D campaign. This creator, Older and Dumber, has worked on creating a comic. Okay. What is this comic? It is they're making a full color printed comic anthology based on the Fates original Dungeons and Dragons live play series. It brings together 4 unique comic artists, each telling a deeply personal, visually striking story about one of our campaign's main characters and exploring their nightmares, regrets, and darkest memories. Each artist has a 6 to 8 page story that reflects their character's emotional journey, using scripts from the live play as references. And we happen to be friends with some of these artists. We are absolutely supporting it. Emily Swan is a good friend of ours from Ithacon. She's there. These folks are up in the Ithaca area, so they are attenders of Ithacon. And I just think it's a great idea for a comic to take one medium and translate it to something else. Explore the stories. I don't know. We might be talking to somebody tonight who's also doing that. Could be.
Well, everybody is, and it's kind of an interesting concept, really. We're going to take our book to a publisher, but they're not going to pay us. The public is going to pay us to show the publisher that we have enough support to make a go out of this comic book. That all makes sense. It's a different world, but it's been a different world for a long time, and for a decade now, longer. And it's kind of a fun thing to do. Some really good comics have come out of this. I've backed dozens of them and have run out of money doing so. Well,
Absolutely.
that and my heroin habit, and I think it's a wonderful course for the future of this medium because it is largely, if not totally, in the hands of the creators. Now
Right. I agree.
that could also be bad news because if you screw up, you only got yourself to blame. Whereas you can't blame, DC's marketing department or whatever because that was my go-to villain when I was at DC. But
All right. Well, we absolutely support that project. We'll be talking about another Kickstarter next week on our show. Our guest is going to be launching their Kickstarter that we have talked to them before, so please be here for that. If you're interested in Coralthea, the link is in the comments. Go ahead and check it out and support it. They're not quite funded yet. They're not asking for a lot. There's a bunch of digital things. It's not a huge commitment, and I think it'd be great for that book to get made. Last thing before we bring our guest in, and also on the topic of independent comics, this weekend I will be at Small Press Expo in beautiful North Bethesda, Maryland. They are gracious enough to welcome Pop Culture Squad as a press member, and we're going to be going around and talking to people, seeing some of our friends, some people who've been on the show, some people who I want to be on the show. Our good friend Dean Haspiel will be there, and we'll probably talk to him. He's going to be on the show. What's
Dean's
that?
got to have a Kickstarter going. He always does.
Well, funny you mentioned that. We may be talking to Dean in the next month or so about a Kickstarter. He may or may not be starting. But that is going to happen. We'll maybe run into Mr. Kitchen and say hi to him. There are tons and tons of independent comics, so please stay tuned to all of our socials for over the next week or so because we will be talking to them. We'll get some quick hit videos and some questions of the day and show you what we see there. And if you can go. If you're in the area, it's a simple thing. You can spend a day, you could spend 2 days. There's some great panels. There's an Ignatz Award ceremony on Saturday night. It's in a wonderful venue for a small show. You will find things you had no idea that are out there every time. I walk out spending more at that show than I spend at any of the big shows.
Yeah, me too.
Because there's so much amazing things and you just want to buy everybody's stuff and support them.
Yeah, I love indie comics shows. And back in the days when I had 2 functional legs, I would go to them all the time, particularly the one here in New York, the Mocha show, which requires an enormous amount of walking up and down stairs and stuff. So I can't do that anymore. But I've had the same sort of experiences. Also, I'm definitely buying stuff. I don't spend much money at other conventions because, I'm not going to spend $22,000 for a comic book that can't be opened because it's in plastic. I don't do that. But I do enjoy those shows. I am envious that you're going. I would have gone to this one if not for the fact that I have to go to Baltimore in a month for a bigger show, and I got to rest up.
You definitely do. You're going to be busy.
I am. I have like 400 panels that I'm on,
and I have like 500. So we'll be just as exhausted.
Just reel out enough to win the bet, Bob. Now that is a statement that Milton Berle, who was believed genuinely to have the largest penis in Hollywood, said to Forrest Tucker, the guy from F Troop, who evidently, because I wasn't there, actually did have the biggest penis in Hollywood. And when somebody had bet him that his wasn't that big, Milton Berle happened to be there and came up with an ad lib that might be one of his best ad lib ever, which was just reel out enough to win the bet.
Yes, there you go. So, speaking of indie comics and speaking of self-publishing and speaking of all these things we're talking about, we're going to bring in a guest, and he has been a veteran of independent small press comic making for the better part of a decade and a half now, at least, and maybe more, I don't know, somewhere in that range. But he's a friend of ours, and he has a new book that's coming out tomorrow. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about his career, and without further ado, welcome into the show, Matt Bors. Nope, you're unmuted. Hang on. Trying to unmute you.
That is the greatest background.
There you go. All right. How you doing, Matt?
I'm great. How you guys doing?
Good. Good to see you.
Nice seeing you, Matt.
Yeah, good to see you again. Toxic Mike, love it.
We are excited about Toxic Crusaders, who comes out tomorrow.
Yeah,
I've read the first issue. I love it. It's balls to the wall crazy. It's art. It's beautiful and gross and all of those things.
if you ever wanted anything in a Toxic Crusaders comic, this would be it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'll give you that.
That would be an interesting discussion to open up to the public. What do you want in a toxic comic book?
Yes.
Well, so I would love to know where did your inspiration for bringing this piece to Ahoy, bringing back the Toxic Crusaders, who were a little known cartoon from the 90s, and bringing it forward. Why did you decide to do that one?
So I hope we got it depends on how much time you got. I got it,
we got time.
We
got
long version and the short version. But I would say, yeah, as you mentioned, I was working in, comics for a while. I was a political cartoonist for 18 years. That was mostly what I was known as. But my first love from when I was a kid is just comic books, superheroes, and mutants primarily, along with other stuff. But like doing monthly comic books was a plan of mine, a desire of mine for a long time. So in 2021, I finally got out of political cartoons. I was just like, after 18 years, I was pretty burnt out. It was like the pandemic, and pretty glad I didn't stick with it. Got to tell you guys, given how things have gone.
Sure.
Well, there are no jobs for political cartoonists.
Well, that too. That was one of the main reasons. I was running my own site, The Nib, and that was doing okay. But like, I was my own employer, basically. Like, I had lost a lot of my clients by that point. All the alt weeklies that used to run me. Anyway,
I want
to talk about The Nib, so we'll come back to it. So I want to know. Let's get to the toxic.
So I had, there was
trying to get this going.
There was a lot of characters and ideas I had and still have for stuff I'd like to do. But I was, I had been thinking for a few years about the Toxic Avenger, and I was like, I can't believe no one's doing anything with this. Like, it's perfect. I had all these ideas. And I kind of just got the opportunity. I was closing The Nib. I had quit political cartooning. I was trying to kind of break into, I don't know what you call it, mainstream comics, floppy comics, direct market comics.
Sure.
And proper comics, I call them.
Proper.
And proper. they got staples in them.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll go along with that. That's fine.
Yeah.
That makes it proper. Yes.
Yes, there we go. And I pitched Lloyd Kaufman at Comic-Con in 2023. I just walked up to him and introduced myself. He didn't know who the hell I was, and I said I have an idea to revive Toxic Avenger and Crusaders. And surprisingly, they were into it and all on board. And I got my publisher Ahoy, who publishes Justice Warriors, my creator-owned comic, and I got them together. And so my idea sort of was an amalgamation of the original, like the Toxic Avenger movie concepts and the Toxic Crusaders stuff. So we did the first Toxic Avenger volume last year, and that's sort of like the origin story for all the mutants in this sort of universe. It reimagines the origin of like the Toxic Avenger, and then now we got the ongoing, and then the team book Toxic Crusaders. So here we are. My plans are. I pitched I pitched like a long run to them, a multi-volume run. So now here we are at the fruition of my plans.
So,
All right.
so for fans of the show, your Toxic Crusaders are, and I don't know how many there are, fans of Toxic Crusaders, the show, who know that comic books still exist, but I'm sure there's a couple. You were one of them.
Yeah.
You've done a lot to these characters. Changed some genders, did some different things to putting things together. How much of that? How was that process for you? And obviously, there's the new character that I know you're very proud of.
Yeah. So we do have. Well, I guess we start with 5 Crusaders. They're all there on the screen if people are seeing what I'm seeing. And the new one is Fungirl. She's a fungus mutant, and she, unlike the others, she doesn't get mutated on accident. She does it to herself on purpose, and combines herself with her fungus collection. She's a little bit odd, but she's a really fun character. And yes, I did. I reinvented some characters, but I feel like what I'm doing with both series is like I'm staying true to sort of the spirit of Trauma and like the origins of the characters, but I'm kind of going in some different directions, or reinventing it. Like the cult, the way I view it is the cult classic movie from like 1983 or 4 is grade Z cinema. It's like kind of offensive. It's like over the top crazy. They like run over a kid's skull and stuff, And then a couple years later in 1991, they have a kids cartoon that's like environmentally themed. So, they've been willing to, I think, stretch the bounds of what this property is capable of. So I don't feel like I'm doing anything too crazy. Like I said, I'm doing kind of a mix of all those things together. So yes, I've changed the gender of some characters. Yeah, not even to try to do a thing, but just there's a lot of guys. They're mostly guys because it was written at a certain time, and it just kind of ended up that way. Honestly, the two villains we sort of gender swapped, Bonehead and Psycho, who's now Psycha. Yeah. And I didn't even intend for that at first, but as I was writing the first volume, there was this other girl who was mutated, one of his bullies, and then the mom of one of his bullies. And I was like, oh, it like makes such natural sense for these characters who hate Melvin, the Toxic Avenger, to actually become these characters who don't have in the cartoon, they don't really have backstories or anything.
Right. There's no motivation. They're just villains.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. So you're significantly younger than I am, and so this cartoon, I was not in my wheelhouse. Let's put it that way. Cartoons are you're never too old for cartoons, but it was not something that I was available to watch.
Yeah, no, I was born in '83, and I think I'm part of a micro generation that caught it.
You are, but so I wasn't familiar with it when I read the book. I went back and did a little bit of research after I read the book, but it feels so natural. These characters feel like they belong in the space that they're in. I think that's a testament to both your writing and the artist's work about how they're they've put these things there. I'm fully on board. I think it's a fantastic story. I think it's exciting. It's and
That's good
you
to
know,
hear.
I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. What can you tell our listeners and viewers about what they can expect from this series?
Yeah. So, to spoil the first volume, which I am not, not expecting everyone to rush out and read at this moment, but they should. There's a toxic train derailment in Tromaville, New Jersey, that creates all these mutants, including the Toxic Avenger. And what it turns out is that aliens are ultimately behind it, which is a plot line from the Saturday morning cartoon that I have taken and sort of I'm planning on running to the ends of the earth with. So an alien conspiracy is behind a plot to sort of pollute the earth, terraform it, if you will, into carbon dioxide so that they can colonize it, because they breathe carbon dioxide instead of oxygen. And they realized we were doing really good and we just needed a little helping hand. So what the Toxic Crusaders is about is this sort of team effort, all these mutants that were transformed by this spill. And they're all kind of different. There's like one guy's like a black ops military guy. The other is a homeless woman merged with her dog. And then there's the nose zone, the guy with the big nose you see. He was like a rail worker driving the train. He was kind of like a political unionist. And then there's Fun Girl I mentioned, so they're all like different kinds of people, but they're trying to expose this alien conspiracy. And it's kind of like violent, radical, ecological action mutant comic. I would say it's in line with like Doom Patrol, Ecstatic, stuff like that. Those are like my kind of templates for like, I'm not doing the exact same thing as them, but just sort of like the vibe, the team book, the weirdness, the violence, high concept stuff.
That's fair.
I like the idea of balancing your political statement, which is essentially the world is going to kill us, to with the bizarre humor of the character in the situation, because people understand political issues better through humor than through long didactic verses of crap.
I think so.
Yeah. That's not unlike your work or your job, really, as a political cartoonist, for which I have enormous respect for the art form, for the history, and for the fact that it's gone.
Yeah, I was going to say the history of it is great. I don't know about the future.
There's no future. Yeah. Newspapers, come on. But you're not the first guy to mix the comic books with political cartooning. John Fischetti went the other direction. Was I think a Pulitzer Prize winner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
political cartoonist, brilliant work. I grew up with it. And he came from Superboy. He was working on Superboy, and luckily the comics business sort of evaporated sometime in the mid-50s, and he had to go get a real job and pick up some Pulitzers while he was at it. But I always thought that was an interesting journey, and I think it's interesting that yours is the same but in the other direction.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I feel like I don't know if did I win the Fischetti Award? There's a Fischetti Award that's given out all the time, and I didn't know. I know of his work in editorial cartoon, but I didn't know he drew Superboy, which is now he's even cooler. Like I was saying, I started out wanting to draw comic books. Like, I mean, I've only ever wanted to draw comic books since I was like a little kid, and I mean, I was into Mad Magazine, EC reprints, and like X-Men and Image Comics and the stuff of my youth, 90s comics. So I always wanted to do that type of stuff, is the point, I guess. And then I broadened my horizons. I got into indie comics. I got into strips. I got into political cartoons. But to me, it feels really natural to to go do this. It's always been my plan. I just sort of didn't get to it until my 40s. So I love writing genre fiction. I love writing like violent mutant books, and filling them with politics and satire, which is kind of my lane right now. It's I think it's not it shouldn't be too unusual for anyone who is reading my political cartoons. But then I also kind of like the fact that I was running the Nib, and we were doing like serious stuff about serious topics, and it was nonfiction, and some of it was quite serious and journalistic, and even intense subject matter in comics and stuff. But then now I'm doing sort of like trauma comics. That's like bottom of the barrel, grade Z slop, trash cinema, which I love and relish in. But I think I can kind of like in both of those things I'm doing like political satire and mutants. So I think it somehow works.
I think that by doing political commentary from the perspective of the Toxic Avenger is a brilliant idea, but it's also really what it's all about. If you look at the roots of the character, if you look at the roots of characters like that, this is how people get informed. So you're actually helping save the world.
Oh,
but don't let that be pressure.
I won't let it go to my head. I mean, think if the if the Toxic Crusaders comic ends up saving the world, that'll be great. We'll sell a lot.
Yeah,
it would actually fit.
Yeah,
it should be. It should be what saves the world.
So, the thing that Mike's saying, I always felt that the Toxic Avenger, films and that thing, while they were Z-list, patched together, the weirdest, most bizarre things, there was always a political statement being made by those films, even though that they were meant to be as ridiculous and just gratuitous as they could be. The concept of toxic waste mutating someone, right? Something that we have been concerned about, something that we always think, that the concept of humanity altering the planet in negative ways, I mean, it's there. It's all part of it.
Yeah. The Toxic Avenger in a lot of ways is not a sophisticated film,
right?
But it comes out of the milieu of the time. Like it's early 80s stuff, coming out of the experience of the 70s. You have like the anti-nuclear movement. You have toxic waste. You have New Jersey, where Toxic Avenger comes from, is the number one Superfund site in the nation. Right. You have landfills and actual smog in a way that people my age don't even remember ever existing in America. Now we've outsourced our smog to Chinese cities.
India and the whole East.
Yeah,
destroyed that.
You're growing. I'm kind of riffing and speculating, but like Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz, they grow up in a world where like people are being sprayed with DDT. The consequences of the atomic age, which created modern superheroes as we know it, essentially. The prospect that science could change the world for better, and that you'd get a Captain America, a Spider-Man, and a Hulk out of it, was ripe for people to go, well, wait, what if you actually were horribly disfigured by this stuff?
Right.
Comics has from the outset, from the beginnings of both political cartooning and of comic strips and now comic books, there's always been this sort of educational subversion going on in various places. You could find it even when it was not supposed to be acceptable to do. My favorite just about my favorite politically oriented movie, and my favorite Marx Brothers movie was a bomb when it was first released. That's Duck Soup, by far, in my opinion, the best political statement ever put on film.
Wow. Okay. I don't even know about it.
Duck
It's a
Soup.
Marx Brothers film.
Oh, okay.
Duck Soup. Everybody who is watching this or listening to this or right now, no matter when you're doing that, go out and it's streaming. It's everywhere. Go out and find Duck Soup and watch it a couple of times. It is hilarious, and you'll get the point.
It holds up. Huh? I could use watch.
It does more now than ever before, I think, which is not a positive statement, by the way.
Yeah, I could use a really old movie. I don't watch like super old movies too often.
Have you ever been to the Puck Building in Manhattan?
No. Oh no. Yeah. Well, maybe briefly. But
oh, thank you. The Puck Building is where they published the Puck magazine that Thomas Nast and a lot of 19th century cartoonists worked for, did covers for. And ultimately, it became one of the first sites that housed MoCA, the independent press convention here in New York. And it's a beautiful, beautiful building on the Lower East Side, just drop dead gorgeous. And they have, and I think they still have some of these, the building got sold, huge reproductions of some of the artwork that was in Puck magazine in the 19th century. It is beautiful. It is stunning. And by the way, back before they changed the building around, it wasn't a perfect place for a comic book convention, particularly for indie comics.
Yeah.
Small press.
God, I was at like one MoCA way back in the day.
That could be it.
Yeah. It was like 2008. Trying to remember. I think it was before Obama took office. Anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Bob is so fast on that stuff.
No.
Anyway. The statue of Puck, which you can barely see in this shot.
Yeah, I think it was that building. I don't know.
Yeah, it used to be on the corner. They had the old printing presses there. They still have bits and pieces of those presses there. Beautiful, beautiful building. And when did this turn into a show about architecture?
Well, we'll get there. It's at 295 Lafayette Street, by the way.
Yeah, it's a one.
There's commercial space available.
Oh, good.
Which is ironic. So, I want to talk a little bit about. It's funny because we were talking about what you're doing now, and I had written down a note earlier that says, you're mainstream now. Over a decade of independent comics with, comics with an X. You're now writing and drawing comic books for comic books. What is that like? How does that? I know that there were financial and political decisions as to why the nib stopped. And I do want to get to the nib, but now where you are, how is that for you? How are you enjoying this? Is this what you wanted?
Yes. Yeah. I've had ideas of doing comics like this for a while. I have a lot of creator-owned ideas I hope to get to in the next 20 some years, including stuff I draw and stuff I just write. I like writing. I like working with other artists. A lot of genre stuff I feel is it's better suited to an artist that's better suited for it. I mean, I can draw okay, but I'm not the best. I'm not the best candidate for a superhero story or something. Let's work with somebody better than my ass on the book and make it actually great. I have designs to do even more mainstream stuff, honestly. I mean, I would do some big 2 stuff. I might try for that at some point. I don't know if I like all kinds of comics. I think that's my problem is like, I
It's not a
so
problem.
I still want to go and do my big long nonfiction graphic novel that I never got to because I was running the nib. And I do have some more sort of indie comic ideas, but frankly, indie comics doesn't pay that great, and mainstream comics does not either. But it actually pays better. You can get page rates. You can, even working for Marvel or DC, which is not from what I understand, it's not as lucrative as it used to be back in the day. That's steady work if you can get it. It's doing a indie comic graphic novel is like sometimes you're lucky to get it in advance at all. So
Sure.
I go where I want to do this stuff, but also it's like, well, that's where you can actually make some money. Like you said I worked in indie comics with an X, but the truth is that I worked in media because my comics were run in publications like The Nation and Daily Coast that paid for them and stuff. So that was really like being this like artistic vestige of the media world, of political cartoons where they actually paid for them. And of course, they don't as much anymore, and there used to be tons of staff jobs and they all got lost. But that's how the money for the nib happened, because of the tech media boom of the 2010s. And that's how I essentially made my living for a while. Initially in print, but then online. So as really part of the media world, and not a world where you have to tell people to go out and buy your books, let alone to the comic book shop where you got to like pre-order them and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I never really felt fully part of the indie comics world because I was a political cartoonist. I wasn't like a fan of graphics and drawn in quarterly guy. I mean, I love that stuff, but I wasn't like in that. No one would have put me in that box. So, I just think I had success doing political cartoons for a while, and that's what I became known for. But, I've always been after this stuff too.
I mean, my vision of your future for you will include possibly Big Two stuff and more things that are there across other things. But I don't think you're ever going to not be political. I don't think that's part of you. There will be a statement to be made, and that's good. Some of my favorite writers who are made their business at the Big Two, they're my favorite writers because they're trying to tell you something beyond that. The strong guy can beat the other guy, or that somebody can figure out. Like there's got to be something about humanity in it. Otherwise, it's not interesting.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what most of my favorite mainstream and superhero stories come down to, even if they're not overtly political.
Right.
Well, that's the best type. Those that don't ram it down your throat, although sometimes it's hard not to. You look back
Please tell us about this, Mike, who created some of the best not overtly political comics of the 80s.
Well, thank you. Wow, that took me back. I was going to say that a couple of our greatest cartoonists of the 20th century, because I talked about the 19th century, did political cartooning for years. Walt Kelly, who did Pogo, and by the way, was a legend in the creators' rights field. Winsor McKay, a half century before that. Little Nemo. He was doing beautiful, brilliant editorial cartoons for William Randolph Hearst, and a lot of them were not in keeping with Hearst's own politics, but Hearst was a comics fan. He published them anyway. You have a path.
I want to talk about the nib. Let's get to that.
Yeah, sure.
It was a award-winning, important enterprise. How did you get to doing that? And What was it like for you while you were doing that?
So we started it in 2013 under Medium, which at the time was and still is, a sort of blogging platform. And at the time of 2013, it was launching. Ev Williams was the billionaire founder of Twitter, this was his next thing. And they were throwing a lot of money around. And I knew through media people writing for them that they were hiring people and looking to launch little publications. And I pitched them on a non-writing publication that became the Nib. So they basically gave me a budget to publish, and it was, fairly no strings attached, no involvement in editorial for one. And, they were after views, users, people publishing on their website. They had a ton of money to burn, honestly. It wasn't like working for a media company. It was working for a tech company, which was kind of weird. And it was this window into time where, I would go down to their offices in San Francisco sometimes, and it would be like a, scene out of a parody, right? Like The Office. They had like nap pods and espresso machines and a yoga instructor. They had a yoga instructor who would come through the office and ding bells. And like that meant it was time to go to meditation. I was thinking, man, well, I got shit to publish tomorrow, or I'm running a publication for you. I don't got time to meditate, man. It was very silly. There's some silly aspects of it that I don't get to talk about all that much. Anyway, you asked what it was like. What it was like was it was great. I mean, I got to publish. I mean, we were publishing multiple times a day, every weekday for 10 years straight, and we didn't take any time off. I mean, we didn't even take off time for holidays. We planned ahead, or like we published thousands and thousands of cartoons. And by the end, I had spent like $2 million on comics. It was awesome. I got to commission whatever I wanted. It was the Trump years. There was a lot of stuff happening. Things were, it felt important, and we could immediately commission a cartoon on it. And it was the 2010s on the internet, man. Everybody had a smartphone. Twitter and Facebook ruled the world. And like you posted stuff online that people liked, and it got around. And a lot of our stuff got widely read, and, it was kind of fun for a while. And, as things happened, the short story is, money dried up and the internet changed, and had to decide to move on before I was kind of just running it on a shoestring budget and not even able to pay myself too much.
It deserves to be noted that when the Nib went down, it was, and I think still is, sorely missed. And you received a lot of press about how good it was and what a shame, and how the world's coming to an end because Nib's gone. And I agreed with those concepts. I think I read about it first in the Daily Cartoonist. I forget where I first read about it. But it was, obviously, I just proved my affinity for the medium, but I thought that was a really great, innovative way of bringing an art form to a new audience.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
You're still at that, and I guess everybody in comics is still at that because it's still a small audience.
Yeah, but I think the thing about the Nib that won't be replicated, by me at least, is that we were reaching a ton of people. Like we had because it was online. It was an online publication. You only get a fraction of people that are willing to pay, but the comics were reaching a lot of people. I think it's fair to say more than go into the stores and buy my monthly comic books. So even though I'm doing what I'm doing, I have felt this like, when you publish online and you're for the internet and you're very timely, I would draw stuff in a day and stay up all night and put it online, and the next morning, and it would go viral. I mean, sometimes I miss that, I miss getting that hit of dopamine, but then I also like not paying attention to the news every day, not having to react, being able to sit and write and think about stories. And, so now I'm in that mode. But the Nib was fun mostly while I was doing it. I mean, I had a great time with everyone I worked with, and we did amazing stuff. And I got to run a print magazine, which was really my dream for a long time, is running a magazine. So I got nothing bad to say.
Well, I'm glad. Um,
Particularly since you still have a career.
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
I mean, if you were like destitute, it would be. I think there would be different tones to your voice. It's like,
Yeah.
God damn it.
Well, one of the reasons I'm like that, and even, by the time it shut down, like you said, there was a lot of big reaction online actually, and it was I wasn't sure what to expect at all, or I didn't know if that many people cared. I knew people cared, but the outpouring of support was really great. But it was kind of like, for me, I had gone through 2 like near-death experiences with the nib, where I got laid off from Medium, and then I got laid off from their next company that funded it, First Look Media. And both times, went through a period of negotiating with the company to like get everything back free and clear, finding new funding. These things where basically I got laid off and I was like, like the nib's done, like I tell my wife, like, I just got laid off. Like, I can't run this thing for free. I'm going to have to figure something out, or it's done for. And then it happened, it got saved from the jaws of death twice. But then by the time I shut it down, I had kind of emotionally moved through that stuff so many times that I was like, I never really expected it to last forever at all. Really, it lasted longer than I definitely imagined at some point, for sure. So I feel like I'm like, all right, it's a win.
It is a win. It's because people fondly remember it.
Well, that was part of my thought process that was confirmed then because I was like, I don't want to shut this thing down past the point where anyone actually gives a shit.
Right. Right. That's
well,
right.
there you go.
Good. Very good. It's we thank Greta Garbo for that.
And I want to know, what made you think that your weapon is a pencil or pen?
I think I said earlier that I've always wanted to do this. I mean, I can't remember ever not wanting to be a cartoonist. So it was like, since I could hold a pencil type stuff. I had told my parent, I was like the classic example of like, that's all I would talk about when I was a little kid. So I've had like an insanely focused drive to do comics as my main thing. So I don't know. I never felt like I made a decision, or it was just, always the medium I gravitated towards, the medium I worked in. If I had an idea, it was a comic idea. That's my answer.
You find a lot of people got into comics because it was a compulsion.
Yeah.
Raised by the fact that that's all you ever really, really wanted to do. The only thing that I have seen that is similar to that is being a rock and roll god.
There you go. That was my second choice, actually.
Sure. It's pretty much everybody's second choice.
Yeah, and it's everyone ends up wishing, of course, they went with that one. But no.
I want to come back to Toxic Crusaders, which comes out tomorrow on September 10th, at your local comic shop or wherever you get comics online. Tristan Wright.
Yeah, we got to
talk about that. Right. Let's talk about the art here, because it's really cool.
Yeah, this guy's off the charts in my opinion. I love this like clean, detailed art style that kind of blends a lot of different influences I see, like from European to like American indie comics.
Yep.
I came across Tristan's work a few years ago. I don't know, random like pandemic year 2021, maybe. Bookmarked a tweet of his that I saw come across my feed. I thought the drawing was awesome. And then I clicked on his site and I was like, man, this guy's really good. And it was just like, he had only done kind of self-published and small press indie comics that, he wrote, drew, and lettered. And I just made a note, because at the time I was still doing political cartoons, but I had my eye on the door, and I was like, thinking about artists I'd like to collaborate with. And I was like, I'm going to get in touch with this guy someday. And then I wrote him at the beginning of the year in 2025. And I asked him if he wanted to work on Toxic Avenger, because we have 5 different artists for the first 5 Toxic Avenger comics coming out. So I wanted to bring in some people that I liked, and I don't know if this guy ever wants to work in mainstream comics or cares about a licensed character or Toxie. And he was super into it, and he did some sample pages and just blew us away. And he actually first did Toxic Avenger Comics #3, which comes out a week from now, was his first comic that he did for us. And then he got the full series based off the strength of that issue. So it's his first mainstream book, proper comics, as I call them.
Proper comics.
Yeah. And I love collaborating with this guy. He's incredible. I feel like he's a huge talent in the making. He's turning in quality work on this stuff that's I think it's off the charts. It's exactly the type of artist I want to work with. The style is perfect for this book and perfect for me.
Yeah, I mean, I only shared the first 3 pages of things. I don't want to spoil anything. I want people to go read this book, but it is just page after page of super well done storytelling. His camera eye is fantastic. The quality, consistent figures. It's just wonderful, and fits the tone of the book. It was a great job picking him for this particular thing, because it is that teen book, but but not, it's more than that, and I'm really excited about seeing more from him.
Yeah, well, there's 2 books from him this month, which will be a lot of Tristan Wright, and I hope it gets him some attention, because honestly, it's I'm usually the guy interviewed, and a lot of comics are thought of as driven by their writers, which they are, but some of the art, the artist obviously matters. I mean, I'm an artist. I don't got to make that argument too much, but it's the artist, the quality of the artist, the storytelling, the character acting, how they draw matters, and that's what translates your script into a comic. And so I hope that people see that in this, and that he gets some shine, because he really deserves it. And we want to keep doing Toxic Crusaders, so I got plans beyond this first miniseries.
The medium itself embraces new talent, but when we talk to artists and we try to get them out there to promote their stuff so that people will see it and go, "Oh, that's cool. I'll go out of my way to find that." What we often find is that the artists can't do that because they're late. Right. And it's 3 a.m. and they're still drawing, and there's no way in the world they're going to be able to go out there and push the comic, except for maybe at conventions. So I think sometimes the writer does have to pick up a little bit of that burden of letting the world know how fantastic the stuff they're working on really is. And every writer I've seen, particularly on this program, who fits into that category, spends a lot of time talking about how great their artist is. You're speaking for them, and I think that's admirable. I think that's wonderful. And it's one of the things that makes this medium unique, because in other forms of showbiz, and comics is showbiz, it's I did everything, screw you.
Yeah.
Not in comics.
Mostly not comics.
But yes, of course.
Yeah, well, and then even, I definitely do feel that responsibility to kind of be out there pounding the pavement for promotion. And I feel like, I'm screaming into the void online sometimes, but
sure,
that's what you have to do. But I spend less time with the book than the artist. You know, I know both him and Fred Harper, who is doing the main series, Toxic Avenger comics. I know they're up late, grinding late at night when I'm sleeping and stuff sometimes, and the pages show for it, man. These guys rule.
I
So
want
yeah,
to. I also want to note, like, so the colorist on this was Lee Lowridge. Did
Yeah.
he do the other stuff for Toxic Avenger?
yes, he's the
Okay.
colorist on both books, and there's a slightly different approach, I think, because this one's like
Well,
Tristan's
he's
art, and it's more cartoony.
right. I
But
mean, Lee's brilliant, and he's not normally one of Ahoy's color choices or colorists. And I don't know. I mean, there's probably economics involved in that, to be honest with you. But just his work on this as well is fantastic. And Rob
Yeah.
Steen, who is consistently Ahoy's lettering god, continues to do such great stuff. I've always been a big fan of that consistent lettering through Ahoy's, because they do a limited
yeah.
a limited slate of books, they're able to get that consistent feel.
I'm glad you brought up Rob Steen, because I think he's doing tremendous work on the Crusader series in particular. Because
absolutely.
I actually, after working with him for a long time, I liked what he did on the first Toxic Avenger. You know, he designed like the green slime narration bubbles, and I decided to throw a bunch of stuff at him for this book. And every issue, I'm doing new stuff. Like there's here, I can pull it up here. It won't spoil anything because I got the issue. There's Nose Zone, the guy with the big nose, and Fun Girl, and I just have only a page where they both have narration captions. They're talking, and I asked him if he could design caption styles for them for just one page, and he did. You know, the snot guys is real snotty.
Oh yeah.
And
That's great.
The mushroom girl's got mushrooms on top.
Yeah, I love that.
And then I'm throwing like there's robotic captions and narration captions and I'm an artist and a letterer, honestly. So I have like my bar is a little high. So I'm like, I want different styles. We got news captions that need to look like a website, and then we got this. So I feel like I probably throw more at him than many writers, maybe. I'm not sure, but I know that I'm kind of listing things that different styles in the scripts for him, and he knocks it out of the park. So he's doing awesome.
Absolutely.
Coloring and lettering are often overlooked by fans in general and commentators in general, because there's so much to say about the writing and the story and the artwork. But without brilliant, good color can save a bad job. It can't totally save it, but bad color can ruin a good job.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be a fight in the comics industry of artists. Neil Adams took up this fight back in the 60s and 70s to get the color artists to read the scripts.
Yeah,
and you'd think like, well, what do you mean they don't read the scripts? Well, because they're pounding out the work by page, and those days color artists got shit. Just got nothing for their work. So even by the big guys. So it's kind of understandable. When I was doing the question at DC, Tatiana Wood, one of the truly brilliant color artists of all time, would go over the script with me panel by panel, go over the artwork with me panel by panel. No other colorist did that so much. Of course, the fact that she was in New York and our offices were in New York made it a lot easier. But still, part of the look of the question, which is fairly highly regarded, I'm extraordinarily proud to say right now, comes from that color design work that Tatiana did, and that came from her dedication to her work.
That's cool. I'm not familiar with her work, but I'm gonna look it up. I agree with you about color and lettering. Like I said, I do it all myself. When you come from like the indie school where you have to learn to do everything yourself, or you want to, like you view comics as a holistic craft. I think comics work better, not necessarily when they're only created by one person, but when they are a holistic vision and everything's working together. And that means that, the lettering looks like it's part of the work, and the coloring fits with the artwork, and the artwork syncs with the script. But as you get more, not necessarily more people, but as you get more of an assembly line process where you're trying to meet deadlines, you're not directly communicating because you're working through an editor, or it's a job you don't care about because it's corporate comics and the page rate's low, you get more room for just things to not line up and sync. And I think that, like, when you have true collaborators on a book that are speaking to one another and working together and solving problems, you see the end results better, which is why a lot of Image books have more considered coloring and lettering, in my opinion, because they're sort of being directed by often the writer or the writer artist team, and trying to make sure everything looks good. And those are books that the artist, at least the artist and the writer, have stakes in, so they're kind of more involved. I think that stuff just looks better. Like, that's, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's absolutely, every word you just said is absolutely true. I would like to point out that some of the writers who came from other media, who were very well established, and primarily from writing fiction, who wanted to take a crack at doing comics, weren't very good at it, because they came at it from the perspective of, I'm the writer. That's not true in comics. It's a collaborative medium.
It is,
it's a visual medium.
You have to learn how to work more with artists with varying degrees of control or letting go of control. But also, I think a lot of comic writers who are primarily comic writers are not artists either. So no shade at anybody in particular, but I think that when you're an artist, you learn to wrestle with the problem of a page, and you viscerally understand space and time, and how much lettering can fit, because you can, no matter how many times you can be taught how many things are not able to fit in a panel, or how much word count clutters the page. I mean, until you sit and hand letter comics, as I used to do, I feel like it bakes it into my brain. I mean, I think honestly, I read through Toxic Crusaders a couple times. I read through it just yesterday for the first time in print, and I mean, it's not, this isn't an Alan Moore comic. I mean, it goes through, it reads a lot faster, which is intentional. It's really fast paced, but like, I try to cut the unnecessary things out. And I feel like I learned that through writing and hand lettering so many strips that were this big that they had to work.
Right. I got that skill because I developed that skill through journalism. Old school journalism figures, but still, you have to be brief. You have to get to the point. But first and foremost, you have to remember, the writer always has to remember, it is a visual medium. Artists who go on to write their own stuff and then go on to just write, by and large, are very good writers, by and large, because they understand that, because they get the visual storytelling concept. It almost goes against the grain for a professional writer, for a writer who is trained professionally, to think like that. When we started up First Comics, I brought in a number of playwrights. John Ostrander felt close to write comics, because they, through understanding stage blocking, understood something about visual storytelling that I thought a lot of others didn't quite get. And I think that worked out nicely. I think that worked out well.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. You have so many, a lot of comic writers now, like who's a comics writer who's coming from another medium. There's so much bleed between them, because a lot of people do go on to write for screen, and I think it's their aspiration, not even because it's necessarily their creative aspiration, but man, if you can get hired to write something for screen, you're getting paid so much more than writing comics that it can actually subsidize you writing comics. It can actually make writing 2 titles
Sure.
worthwhile if you have a side gig where you're actually getting paid quintuple to write for screen. But I guess the point I'm getting at there is that I think this screenplay mindset, the approach, kind of infects comics a little too much. I mean, there's a lot of principles to film that I think translate directly to comics and that are useful, probably the most useful medium. Maybe you can pull things from other places, obviously, but yes, I think that's kind of screenplay writing and directing is a little too prevalent in comics as opposed to a more collaborative process with the artist. Like I send scripts back and forth, or sketches back and forth with artists sometimes, and I'll say, oh, can we do it this way? Or I'll even do a little, I'll do a drawing of something if I have it in my head how I'm seeing it, but without trying to be, dictate to them how the layout is going to be. People can always come back to me with different stuff, and they do. But I just like being more collaborative as opposed to feeling like I'm just turning in a screenplay that they're doing step by step. And I do turn in full scripts, but sometimes, I'll just say let's riff on this page, and you can kind of lay it out however you want.
Mike Barron used to do thumbnails on for all of his scripts, and then he would turn them in as the script, little stick figures with dialogue, and that was just to indicate to the artist what was going on inside his brain with respect to the story. And
because you need to qualify that.
I did have to qualify that, yes. And he encouraged those artists to, do what they're being paid to do, which is draw the story. This is just how he sees it. And I think his best stuff was done that way. Now, with computers and all of that, we don't use paper. We don't send paper scripts to anybody. And what Mike used to do was he would draw those pages on the backs of old scripts, old typed out scripts. He was recycling the paper, which I thought was hilarious and also indicative of some of his best work.
It's interesting because I think I ran into somebody recently who did work with Mike with that and hated it.
Really?
Yes, I don't remember who it was. I will find it and I'll tell you about tomorrow. I'll remember who it was, but it's interesting again, and it's just to point out that there is so many different ways to attack this medium.
Right.
I think that John Ostrander's approach and working with Tim Truman and people like Tom Mandrake and the rest worked really well. Where he came at it from a thinking about characters moving in space, and in limited space, right? I think that's one of the aspects of of playwrights versus screenwriters, because playwrights there's a limited amount of space that a character can move on a stage, and so I think it kind of constricts that as to what you're telling that the character can do on the page. And I think that makes sense. I wanted to come back before we get done with this, and I wanted to come back to Toxic Avenger, Toxic Crusaders. There's this definite, very, very high volume of nostalgia media being produced today, and every day it feels like there's more. And I wonder where that comes from. I want your opinion on it. Is it a pining for a different time, or is it a lack of creativity in some respects?
Yeah, well, it depends
don't
on,
mean that to be
am I
offensive
trying
to you.
to how real we want to get while I'm writing
Yeah.
a nostalgia property, licensed thing. This is my first licensed comic.
Right.
You're right. We're at what seems like a peak of it. I mean, it would be hard to go any higher. We got comics for Silverhawks, Cowboys, and Moon Mesa.
Racer X comes out tomorrow for the first.
Yeah. I mean, every property that existed. I mean, I think.
Also, Blue Falcon and Dynamite comes out tomorrow in comics.
Yeah. Well, most of comics. I mean, what's the market share of Marvel and DC? Right? It's, I don't know, the majority.
Yeah.
Of comic books sold.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, but it's not what it used to be.
That's the same thing, really. I mean, that's
Sure.
nostalgia property. That's corporate IP. And most of the stuff we're talking about, though, comes from other mediums, and the comics are sort of like the ancillary thing to usually a movie or an animated series that used to exist. I mean, besides the fact that it's about what is it about? I don't know, the commercialization of IP. I think it's about just that it's hard to break through with your own stuff right now because companies know, like, the name recognition of something you like or remember will get you to pay attention to it more than something you've never heard of in your life. And there's not like central advertising avenues like there used to be, like television and newspapers that everybody was reading. So like everybody kind of lives in their own world. It's hard to find out about stuff. I think that's part of it. I think I don't know if there's less people making money in publishing now. Yes, there's more people publishing things, but far less people making great money. And like for me to work in comics, if I want to write comic books for a living, which I do, I currently am, so I'm doing all right at it. But if I want to keep this going, I mean, I have enough creator-owned ideas that I could do them all probably forever. But am I going to, unless I really hit, am I going to make that happen for myself? I mean, probably not. I should try to write some stuff for Marvel and DC, where the most comics buying public, like this is what all the people that are successful at like Image Comics, they all make their names. Well, maybe they make their name on the creator-owned series, but they all go and write titles for the big two that more people are going to buy just on the basis of that character that they're writing, not their name.
If you have a story to tell and it works best with an established superhero, where you know the backstory and you know the environment, that's great. That's the story you want to tell. And if the story is completely original or it's based upon something you saw on TV when you were growing up, yeah, those are the stories you want to tell. It's still all with the talent. It's still all on the shoulders of the creators of the story, no matter what it is. So let me ask you this question. Do you get any pushback from the licensor?
No, which is one of the things that makes this kind of a ideal situation for me, and maybe unlike other licensed gigs. Trauma was super supportive and has been, and they don't give me major direction at all. They're letting me rip. Like I said, I pitched a long run. I pitched like a multi-volume series that we break it out into 2 books and all this stuff. I had like ambitious plans, and they were like, they wanted to do it all. So right now we're in, I don't know where we're at in the plan, a third of the way through, halfway through. Not halfway. Maybe I'm writing halfway at this point, but not publishing halfway. So, I guess that's the ideal situation, I say, for like what you're describing. Is I have come in with, my ideas as a writer. my reinterpretation of the comic. I'm not being dictated to. I'm not trying to write a straight up nostalgia thing. You know, some of these properties do replicate the style of whatever they're from, like to a T, right? That's kind of what the fan base wants, right? Like if you write Sonic and Hedgehog comics, you know, no shade to the writers of that, but I think people just want it straightforward Sonic. They don't want to like the writer to come in and fuck with stuff and reinterpret the world and do a new, right? Like they just want their Sonic comic. So you know, that's
so that's why Alan Moore hasn't written Sonic the Hedgehog. That's
yeah. Well, you know, and then you know, I want the Alan Moore Sonic the Hedgehog. I want to know what that's about.
Me too.
But,
I'd stand in line to buy that.
Yeah.
I just like to hear Alan Moore on hearing about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Well, you know, he did this story. I mentioned Walt Kelly before. He did the story about Pogo in Swamp Thing way back when he was doing Swamp Thing, and it was a wonderful story. And you had to get a few pages in before you realized, if you were familiar with Pogo, that that's where he was coming from. And I was stunned later to discover that he didn't read Pogo in the newspapers. I mean, it was in a British newspaper or 2 or 3 or 4. He could have, but he didn't. That wasn't part of his growing up experience. He discovered Pogo, thought it was so phenomenal that, and here's the weird part, he could do a Swamp Thing story with it. And okay, you know, if I was editing Swamp Thing and Alan came up and said, let's do Walt Kelly, I'd go, okay, that sounds interesting. What do you have in mind? Because I'm not a complete idiot. This is where the magic happens.
So I want to come back to what you were saying there, Matt, in that I think you're right. I think that comic book creators, writers, artists have, I think they're both the licensed aspect and the creator owned aspect kind of feed off of each other if you're successful. And if you're doing it right, it works that way. There are people who, you know, work for licensed books and then they go and do a creator owned book and somebody's like, oh, I remember that creator, whether it's writer or artist, on this license thing that I bought because I like that character. And then maybe they'll go try that book. Or somebody will say, oh, I'm gonna pick up this character over here because I know this person did a creator own thing that I enjoyed. And there's a little bit of that. I mean, that's one of the things that's changed over the last 40 years in comics prior to the previous 40 years, in that we know the names of the creators. And so there's a bit of a following that happens there. I mean, you know, when I started reading and reading comics, you know, that was the begin, you know, one of the big portions of that.
I mean,
it's only gotten bigger since.
That's the foundation of Image Comics, is that not just that they have their own stories to tell that are their own IP.
Stars.
It's that you will follow them to the book. That's what happened. Millions of people will go buy their book that they do, no matter what it is. So that happens to a lesser degree today. We're not in the millions, but you know, you make a name for yourself, and then hopefully you're in demand. I mean, not everybody works that way. Like I know people who seem like they only just work for Marvel and DC, and they're happy to never do anything else. And then, you know, I know a lot of indie cartoonists who just do graphic novels, and, you know, they look down upon Marvel and DC stuff. They never work for them in their life. So I'm not like that. I'm kind of, I want them to do all kinds of stuff, but I've never actually worked for them. Maybe, you know, people have their stories and they get sick of that stuff, and I don't know how it would go, but like, you know, I have aspirations for that, just like a lot of people.
It's definitely going to happen. Like that's not something I'm questioning. I'm looking forward to that.
Let's talk about.
I'll say I have some ideas, but anyway, go, Mike.
Let's talk about the big three for just a brief moment, because Bob and I are not only readers of Archie comics, but we're not afraid to say that we read Archie comics. And that's as establishment as you can get, although establishment today does stretch the bounds a little bit. If you want to write Marvel, write Marvel. If you want to write DC, write DC. You want to write Archie, write Archie. And the weirdest thing is, nowadays it doesn't matter. We go back and forth.
Yeah.
Very few exclusive contracts are around, and people aren't really seeking them out the way they did maybe.
Well, exclusive contracts aren't what they are. I mean, I've spoken to a bunch of people who do have exclusive contracts with, there's like 8 carve outs so that they could still do the things they want to do.
Right. And that's the way it should be.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean,
world, that's the way it should be.
I guess it's, I know some people like that too. I mean, when you're working on your creator-owned book and this other thing that you carved out, then they can give you 2 titles and then you're working full time. But really, I guess it's about locking you down for those 2 books and preventing you from working for the other big 2 company or any of the other ones, I guess too. But I don't know. I don't know exactly.
Well,
how that,
I look forward to having those discussions with you in the future.
Yeah, maybe it'd be a good problem to deal with.
Sure. We're running out of time. I want to tell people again, tomorrow on September 10th, the Justice Warriors is a book you should go read from that board.
And it's been anthologized,
and it's our to
make it easy.
Toxic Crusaders comes out tomorrow, and Tristan Wright is on the art, and it's a lot of fun. It's a good read. I want everybody to go do that, and you're also working on the Toxic Avenger comics. What else are you doing though? You've been doing some work with Oni as well.
Yes, but before I say that, I gotta say another Toxic thing in October.
Oh, the team up.
Toxic Avenger and Justice Warriors. Actually, I managed to work in a crossover with my own my comic that I co-created with Ben Clarkson in this. So is
that going to be a series or is that part of the Toxic team up?
It's the last issue of the Toxic team up. So there
cannot be a last issue of the Toxic team up.
I mean, it's a mini series. That's how they do most things, these days, and definitely at Ahoy. But that doesn't mean
Ahoy does 5-issue miniseries of everything, and then they put it in a nice little book, and then they go and do another. And I love that.
There's a lot of multi-volume stuff they do, and Toxic Avenger Comics is actually their first ongoing. You asked about Oni and EC work. I do. Yes, I do some comics for the EC line, which I love. EC is like a foundational comics line to me. I read the reprints growing up, and when they were relaunching, I was like, no way I'm not writing some EC comics. So I've done stuff for Cruel Universe and what's the other one? Cruel Kingdom, the fantasy one. And then the horror one is called Catacombs of Torment, which I like saying. And I have a comic I just actually looked at the inks for this one. I mean, I don't even know if it's solicited yet because it's a few issues out, but it's by this artist, Claire Rowe, who's amazing. She did an incredible job on this. And it's kind of a thriller, crime, horror comic, different than most of my usual stuff. I'm just kind of experimenting with the genre stuff. So I'm not in there a ton, but I mean, I try to pitch them as often as I get ideas, and that's about it. I have a creator-owned thing in the background, but it's mostly Toxic Avenger stuff right now.
Well, I'm loving it.
I've been reading comics since about 3 weeks after the Big Bang, and to this day, new talent comes along that excites the hell out of me. I'm like 11 years old again, because the medium is always growing, it's always changing, and it's not always changing in the same direction like other media tend to do. And that's the beauty of comics. It's a collaborative medium. It is a unique medium. Maybe it's because it appeals to a comparatively small group of people who, by the way, are ahead of the curve when it comes to
Yes.
intelligence and exposure to other things. And it's nice to work as a storyteller for that environment. It's wonderful.
I like your framing of comics readers as intellectual sophisticates.
It's true.
I'm
It
sure
is
it's
true.
true. I'm gonna
It
go
is.
with that, but it's beautifully said. I like you, I've been reading comics since less or more years after the Big Bang than you, but yes, I mean I read them probably almost every day because you can still pick stuff up and just be floored by it and like find new stuff, find new talent. Even if it's old stuff that you haven't read before, which I go back in time and read a lot of old stuff that I rediscover that I was not going to be receptive to when I was 13 and into Jim Lee. But now I'm like, oh, this is like some of the best cartooning I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
There was a whole world of culture before we were born. You learn that around the time you become of college age. But that's okay. And you can go back. We have access to most of the old movies, most of the old comics, a hell of a lot of the stuff from the 19th century because, it's paper and somebody kept it.
Well, yeah,
And they
we've
kept it for a reason.
I think in comics, there's never been more available at any time in history. I mean, to the point where I might even think it's a problem as a modern creator because you're competing with people being able to buy everything, right? Every old strip, a newspaper strip worth reading is in a hardback collection. Every run, every crappy nonsense run of mainstream comics has an omnibus at this point. You're like, the really people looking to buy the $125 run of this random Marvel series that no one remembers or talks about anymore? And the answer is, yeah, the people who loved it and read it and bought it at the time when they were kids now have to buy the hardback nice collection of it.
And they only have to sell a few hundred of those things. So
I'm one of those
nice
suckers with a lot of this
I
stuff.
mean,
I got to buy the Grant Morrison X-Men book, and I got to buy all the other ones.
But you're 100% right. I mean, even tomorrow, this week comes out. There's a DC Finest Horror, Devil's Doorway, which collects a whole bunch of House of Secrets, House of Mystery, Phantom Stranger from the 70s that nobody but Mike was reading, and
well, it's for people like
coming
Mike.
out.
Yeah, there's people like Mike, and then there's stuff that's geared towards people like me. And it's so when the people who are adults with mortgages and disposable incomes walk in the store, they go, "Oh yeah, I remember that comic. I used to have it in floppies," and then they buy the book. And nothing wrong with it, but I do think it is reflective of like the comic book buying public.
It's hard.
Who's not young and buying like manga or YA books and stuff. Like
it's also why you're here.
Yeah.
Talk about your book, to get people to be interested in it, because it is you always have to find a way to break through. It's part of the scene.
There's so much stuff out there that nobody has time or money to absorb it all. I go through life right now wondering why everybody in the world who can afford to doesn't have the complete set of Terry and the Pirates in hardcover. It is the greatest thing ever drawn and written, and it's accessible. When I was a kid, we had to track down this stuff. It was impossible to read the whole thing. Now, a little bit of Dexedrine, and I can read the whole thing in one sitting.
Yeah. Now, I'll since we're rapping about old comic strips. Now, I'm not a Terry's and the Pirates guy. I think I would love to read it, but I get on random kicks for old comic strips. And like, for instance, I'm reading some old Mickey Mouse. I read Gasoline Alley. I'm reading this old. I got into this strip. What's it called? Why am I? What's it called? Mary. I'm blanking on the name. It's called On the Stage. Well, anyway, it's
We're gonna
a
wait for you.
yeah, I know. What the heck? Mary
Mike.
Perkins on stage.
Mary
There we go.
Perkins on stage by Leonard
Okay.
Starr.
Yeah. So anyway, I flubbed it given that I read it every day. I don't look at the cover, I guess. But that's like an example of a random old. It's this old soap opera comic that normally I would think, especially in my younger days, would have had nothing but distaste for. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, this is kind of a genre of comic that I just ignored, and like, what's up with it? So anyway, that's one of my random kicks. The point, though, is that when I read these old comics, instead of binging them like you described, I like to actually read no more than 1 page a day. So which is usually 3 strips or a Sunday. So I have a couple comic book collections, and I'll just do 1 page a day of each. It'll take me like a year to read through the book, but I think the work is better suited to be digested that way, because it was written for like a daily pace. And if you just plow through it, I feel like
I agree.
You're gonna miss stuff.
Yeah. So anyway, that's
I agree wholeheartedly.
That's maybe a weird thing that I do, but I feel like that's the
good
way.
stuff.
That's the way you need to read daily strips, in my opinion.
Absolutely agree. And by the way, thank you for plugging Floyd Godfredson's Mickey Mouse.
Oh yeah.
I'm not a huge Disney fan. I'm not a big Disney fan, other than Karl Barks and Floyd Godfredson, both of whom are at the very pinnacle of cartooning.
Oh yeah, well that's another thing where I was like, I'm an anti-Disney guy, right? When I was growing up, I was like, this is the lamest corporate stuff that's ever been barfed out. And then I'm like,
I agree.
And then I realized it came from this old comic that is a lot more unrestrained and freewheeling and has just great primordial cartooning to it. That's like elemental, old school stuff, and it's perfect.
That's awesome. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much. Really quick, is there any place people can see you in person coming up that you want to talk about?
Yeah, this weekend I'm at the Guelph Comics Jam in Guelph, Ontario. So I live in Canada now. So if you're around there,
please give Cecil a hug for me, please.
Yeah,
I haven't been to Guelph in about 20 years, but I love Canada. I love Ontario. I'd be up there in a heartbeat. I might not come back. I mean, that's
yeah. It'd be your last heartbeat.
That's right. There you go. There you go.
All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks for being here.
Thanks very much, Matt.
Everybody go get Toxic Crusaders tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Great talking with you. That was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
I enjoyed that.
Wonderful. We're out of time. Thanks everybody for being here. We will be back next Tuesday, and the Tuesdays after we are scheduled for a bunch of people. We'll just follow us, subscribe, pay attention to where we are on all of our social media. It's Pop Culture Squad, one word, pretty much everywhere. We'll let you know when we're going to be live. We'll let you know where you can find copies of this. If you missed any part of this podcast, either audio wise or visually, go back and rewatch and get to the beginning and go check out our other episodes. Thanks everybody for being here.
Our guest next week
is Zach Quaintance, otherwise known as Comics Bookcase, and he has a Kickstarter that it will be launching that day. So you will have an opportunity to hear and get to see some things from this Kickstarter on launch day next Tuesday, and we're excited for it.
All right. Thank you, folks, for being here.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Take it easy, folks.
This has been a production of the Pop Culture Squad Network. PopCultureSquad.com. How do you nerd?